In Jamaica, we learned that the school really is the heartbeat of the community, and that we were able to involve the police who we were working with at the time in a general violence reduction capacity.
Our theory is a community without stability there will be non-functional, and it will elect improper leaders, and it will have a poor economy.
We found that the police working in the schools was extremely effective. We worked in a secondary school where there was 10, 12 knifings a day, and the police officer working with us in consultation was able to really settle these kids down, and and we started to observe that the bully, victim, bystander ideas that we were working on really applied in that setting. We didn't really go there with that intention. We went there to try to teach police non-violent ways to deal with people in the community. And then we realized that the school really was the heartbeat of the community, and that when we work with them to improve the quality of the Montego-based secondary school, it sort of spread out into the community, and that connected us to the business community, and that connected us to other aspects of the government. And a lot of times we discover things that we're not looking for, like the relationship between a peaceful school and achievement. That when you reduce the amount of bullying in a school, the kids achieve better. They are able to learn, they feel more creative, they feel safer.
This is the framework, okay? This is the compass that directs the ship. 1, in a non-peaceful school, there are problematic power dynamics in which the victimizer controls the atmosphere or climate of the school. When that happens, the capacity to mentalize goes down. Mentalization is self-reflection with feeling control. When that situation exists in a school is a bullying mess, what often happens is that it becomes then lethal or very dangerous when a humiliation pressure point is touched, and in which a child then may become either suicidal or homicidal.
In our experience, bullies or coercive behavior only happens when adults allow it. That adults really have to create the framework within which kids can learn how to get along and be friends. The sustainability of these programs really is like, I often use the example of sports in America, where sports crazy, where kids are participating in dozens of sports. Every school has a coach for every sport. The sport goes on from year to year, so it's a sustainable activity. And what happens is that if you try to get somebody who's a coach for the climate and try to get them to focus on how are things going, how are the power dynamics, are people reflecting, are kids forming subgroups, are they being mean, are they using cyberbullying to hurt each other, is there an imbalance in these power struggles? If adults are not keeping their eye on that, and I would suggest that that's really the key to sustainability, is to have adults focused on the environment and have an open, reflective dialogue about what's going on that includes children, parents, support staff, as well as the big shots in the school like the principal and the superintendent. The adults need to really understand that nothing will happen unless the kids buy into it.
Children learn by imitation very, very strongly. By about 3rd grade, children begin to develop their own peer leadership structure. So the way you use children varies according to their developmental age, which is why teachers and consultants at Casse need to really understand that.
As you get older, the kids will take more responsibility, and it'll come from them. So I think the sustainability of this program really has to do with the involvement of the adults and their ability to invest the time and energy necessary to have these programs continue. What Casse has done is really unique in the sense that it's offered themselves without having to chase the school down. And I think that what you'll find is that when a school feels enough, that when the leadership in the school, and I think this really comes down to a leadership issue, that when the leadership in the school says, we need to do something, and here's this group that has these ideas. And that, I think, will separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will, because when a school's not ready, they're simply not going to come out and ask for help. And it's just like somebody that has a mental health issue and they're depressed. If they don't come out and say, gee, I need some help, you're not going to be able to help them. And much the same way with a school, not that they're symptomatic, it's that a school, when they feel like they need help, will be open to help. Not everybody in the school will be open to help. There'll be some teachers that won't want it, there'll be some parents that won't want it, there'll be some kids that won't want to get involved. But this really is a leadership issue. When the leadership is reflective, is positive, then you'll see that the school will be ready for any kind of intervention. Our work with the FBI was really theoretical in the sense they brought together 18 schools that had school shootings, and they just couldn't figure out how this could happen because it didn't follow the normal profile. They invited us because of our research on bullying, and one of the things they knew about all these school shootings is that there was a clear pattern of sustained bullying that was ignored by adults in the schools. And so one of the things that we learned from the work with the FBI is that bullying is a process that will be sustained, and when it's sustained, certain kids will get to a point where, and they're not, the one thing that we learned about kids that did do the shootings were that they were normal and they were not the typical disciplinary problem. They were kids that were somewhat grandiose, injustice collectors that would sort of go through the day, and the bullying really impacted them. And so it pushed them into a corner, and it compressed their humiliation to the point where they reached a certain point and lashed back out at the school in a type of avenging angel type of way. And I think what we learned and what we took from that whole experience of talking to people that had shootings in their schools was how important it was to keep an eye on the climate. That if you think that because your kids are academically smart, I mean, Columbine had really smart kids, they were really athletic, they were really achievement-oriented, and that's not enough. The fact that the kids are achieving and that they're succeeding is not enough, because the climate in those schools can become quite nasty, and if the adults aren't tuned into it, then one child, all it takes is one kid, and one of the things that we came from that conference with was there's a school shooter in every suburban school. And I think that that's really scary. And if that concept can be kept in the back of your mind, then adults really will be motivated to understand that it's important to keep an eye on bullying, it's important to keep an eye on the climate of the school, because the net result of that could be something quite extreme. And I think that whether it's shootings, which is one way of doing it, or it's suicides, we've had a number of suicides in Massachusetts, where I live, that were related to gender bullying and of a young African-American boy, yeah, and disability bullying, where they sort of focused on that, and then the kids ended up hanging themselves. So that these extreme explosions, inward or outward, are related to this sort of compressed humiliation that is built up in a school where the adults are not keeping an eye on the climate. I think it's important to recognize that bullying is not just a childhood behavior, that bullying can occur at all levels. And one of the points we make in our writing is that, and it's an undiscussable, is that teachers bully, and that principals bully, and that school committees bully the principals, that bullying is a behavior that's ageless, that it does not settle into just children, that teachers need to be, if you have a school where teachers are allowed to bully children, or children are allowed to bully teachers, and the leadership doesn't really pick up on that, you're going to have an imitation effect. That what will happen when you just think that bullying is for children and forget that adults can bully as well, you will have imitation, that you won't get a school to change, because the children will look at what the adults are doing, and if the adults are bullying, then the kids will think that this is okay to do.
Now the question then comes, and Lynn and Christie provided part of the answer, is how do you get the community into the school? They were successful in getting the mayor to send out letters, and the community has become very involved with that school. I want to simply point out, we're looking into that in great depth at the moment through the parent-teacher alliances that have various names in different countries. But the critical thing, I think, that has to change about them is they were devised to support schools when schools didn't have the money to educate children. And they would support it with money-raising activities. In America, those organizations have existed for well over 100 years. The new parent-teacher group that we are now experimenting with in Houston, Texas, about 20 schools, the parents become teachers. They educate themselves and they develop learning modules, and the teachers re-enter the parent-teacher organization. Right now, I guarantee you, in a parent-teacher organization, you'll see no teachers. In the new one, the teachers have to be present because they have to see the role of the parent as not merely making cupcakes and raising money, but actually helping the teachers teach. A good example is one module on child rearing was written by a pediatrician whose kids went to that school. So the idea of active parental involvement in a learning way with parents as teachers, essentially, and teachers' involvement with the parent group, which acknowledges the importance of the parent and improves communication, I think is the way it's going to have to go.